I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it.
Hello amigos. Welcome to Move It Movie. As today's movie porter, we are transporting Zack Snyder's Justice League, often referred to as the Snyder Cut. It is the 2021 director's cut of the 2017 American superhero film Justice League, runs 4 hours and 2 minutes. That's longer than Avatar, The Avengers, Endgame, The Irishman, Dances with Wolves, Malcolm X, Lawrence of Arabia, and any of the Godfather movies. If it were released to big screens, it would tie Kenneth Branagh's 1996 adaptation of Hamlet as the longest major studio theatrical release in history. The backstory: Justice League was meant to be the third in a series of Zack Snyder superhero films after Man of Steel and Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, but Snyder and his chief collaborator and wife, executive producer Deborah Snyder, stepped down during post-production to grieve for their daughter, who had died unexpectedly. The releasing studio, Warner Brothers, was already pressuring the Snyders to add humor, following the relative box office disappointment of the figuratively and literally funereal Batman v Superman, which ended with Superman's death. Joss Whedon, director of the first 2 Avengers films, was brought in to take the project over the finish line, contain the running time to 2 hours, and keep things light. Whedon ended up rewriting and reshooting most of the movie, Whedonizing it with smartality one-liners and shooting new action scenes that, while competent, lacked the turbocharged delirium. Snyder is known for, according to some behind-the-scenes accounts, less than 20% of what ended up in the final release was directed by Snyder. The recut, it feels more correct to call it a restoration, contains 0 Whedon footage. It's broken into 7 chapters with titles, each of which has a self-contained quality reminiscent of issues of a monthly comic. Only a sliver of what's on screen is wholly new, notably a forward-looking teaser conversation between Batman and the Joker, perched awkwardly at the end of an otherwise gorgeously shaped 3-plus-hour experience. But Snyder generated so much material during the original shoot, much of it shelved by Warner Brothers without being properly finished by visual effects artists, that the totality still feels like a new work. The vast majority of superhero blockbusters are not intended as freestanding works of creative expression. They're meant to function as cogs in a content-producing machine that largely avoids painful or unanswerable questions, feeding disposable imagery and situations to viewers who expect to be rewarded for their brand loyalty and familiarity with comics lore by being given more and more and more of the thing they already know they like. The Snyder Cut, in comparison, is a corporate product that feels as if it sprung from a fever dream, like Superman Returns, Ang Lee's Hulk, and such uncategorizably kooky/daring non-superhero comics adaptations as Popeye, A History of Violence, Road to Perdition, and American Splendor. Or, for that matter, non-comic book films modded like One from the Heart, Speed Racer, The Hudsucker Proxy, and Playtime. Films like these are labors of childlike enthusiasm and obtuse obsession, qualities more common to art house and indie cinema than the major studio blockbuster. When you compare the hugeness of these productions to the stubbornly private choices of story and style, they seem perversely out of sync with whatever was considered normal filmmaking when they were first released into the world. The Whedon cut of Justice League was the opposite of that. It felt and played more like a Marvel film, busy and quip-driven, and relentlessly charming. It favored Bruce Wayne/Batman and Diana Prince/Wonder Woman, and marginalized Clark Kent/Superman, Arthur Curry/Aquaman, Barry Allen/The Flash, and Victor Stone/Cyborg. Snyder's cut is an ensemble picture that does as good a job as MCU's Avengers films of presenting a band of heroes as strong-willed, fully rounded individuals, people who had lives and issues before the main action started, and who must learn to work together. There's a plot, basically the same as in the first Justice League, and for that matter, the Avengers movies. A superhuman, megalomaniacal bad guy wants access to a source of time and space dominating superpowers, and can only get it by cobbling together scattered elements. But plot might be the 10th most important thing on this movie's mind. This is the definitive cut, not just in terms of canonical events and actions, but aesthetic purity. Some scenes have been moved or reshaped, others have been restructured or added, and pretty much everything has been lengthened. What registers most strongly is the film's sense of space and place, which might make one wonder if many of the complaints about Snyder's other superhero pictures stem from his own inclinations, and the commercial demands of nine-figure budget tentpoles being fundamentally at odds with each other. The most remarkable restoration, character-wise, is the Cyborg storyline. It mirrors all the other stories of characters reconciling mixed feelings about their childhoods and accepting the limitations of their parents. This is the movie's main preoccupation, and the emotion it generates becomes a binding agent for the production, which by nature of its audacious structure and pacing is constantly at risk of boring the audience by turning into a candy sampler of set pieces. Fisher's storyline, Cyborg's resentment of his emotionally inept scientist father, played by Joe Morton, aka Skynet's daddy in Terminator 2, is built out with empathy and care, and paid off in a moving climax that offers redemption without invalidating ill will. Cyborg's struggles complement Bruce Wayne's relationship to his butler/surrogate dad Alfred, as well as the memory of his murdered father and mother, absent presences that impact everything he does. Clark Kent's relationship to his sainted adoptive mom, Martha, and the departed adoptive father Jonathan Kent and blood father Jor-El are reconsidered, recontextualized, and reborn along with Superman himself. Wonder Woman's feelings about leaving her family, her island, and its culture are woven in as well, plus Aquaman's resentment at being a bispecies hybrid torn between two worlds and feeling abandoned by both, and Barry's relationship with his incarcerated criminal dad, whom he loves and wants to please even though his actions brought shame on their family and made Barry's life worse. The result is the yeastiest comics-inspired production that Snyder has made to date. The stories and characterizations genuflect towards milestones in DC Comics and movies without getting cute and showing us their homework. Affleck's graying, world-weary Batman channels the burned-out, middle-aged, Clint Eastwoodian Dark Knight from Frank Miller's 1980s comics. The relationship between Clark Kent and Lois Lane is a Death of Superman riff that delves more deeply into grief than any DCU film, and strikes idealistic romantic notes reminiscent of Superman epics from the Christopher Reeve era. It also gets into the monkey's paw aspect of bringing a dead superhero back to life. At this point, let's take a moment to talk about the look of the film. Zack Snyder's Justice League is framed in the squarish, roughly 4:3 Academy ratio rather than the narrow and wide format preferred by most epics. This has the effect of making a newish work feel old, and it becomes as important as the parent-child thematics in terms of its ability to unify Snyder's fragmented vision. When Junkie XL's score is blasting, and the members of the Justice League are doing heroic things rather than blabbing amongst themselves, we're watching the superhero version of a symphonic silent epic in the vein of Intolerance, Sunrise, or Metropolis, scene after scene of impeccably composed panoramas, like those large-format oil paintings that depict tiny figures dwarfed by mountains and sky. Except in this case, it's the heroes and villains who are dwarfed by landscapes, or the cosmos, or mortals looking up in awe at superheroes looming overhead, silhouetted against sunlight, clouds, flame, and haze. Uncharacteristically for Snyder, the camera often doesn't move unless it needs to, and a scene doesn't cut away until it has wrung out the last drop of whatever vibe it was trying to cultivate. Throughout, the direction seems not merely unhurried but meditative, to the point of pokiness. This is the Satan Tango of superhero flicks, an art house tailbone killer. The point is not to shovel plot information at the viewer. The point is to create a fantastic world where metaphors are real, and give you time to bask in it. Scenes often start long before screenwriting manuals tell you that they should, and continue way past the point when significant exposition has been conveyed. This is a feature of Justice League, not a bug, and even though many are bound to find it off-putting or simply boring, it results in a good number of the scenes and sequences that make the film feel truly special, even as they eliminate any possibility that Zack Snyder's Justice League will tell a propulsive, coherent orderly tale. One memorable bit is more self-consciously art for art's sake. Aquaman, having concluded important business in a seaside pub, walks along pier jutting into the sea, unfazed by immense waves clashing ahead of him. The waves are powerful enough to knock over an apatosaur, but Aquaman just strolls into them, vanishing in salt water. Mist. The scene is filmed in slow motion with no dialogue or sound effects and backed with a pop song cranked to 11. Christopher Nolan made a lot of noise about modeling The Dark Knight on Michael Mann's Heat, but this is one of many moments in this film that are more manlike in the way that they suspend time. That Aquaman seaside power walk is also reminiscent of the moment in The Royal Tenenbaums, when the love-struck Richie watches Margot walk off a bus. Except here it's not about one character's love for another, but the director's love for Aquaman and the actor who plays him. The movie's directorial highlight might be the sequence where Barry tries to get a job at a pet store and pauses to save a woman he's smitten with from an oncoming truck, driven by a man who's not paying attention to the road because he's busy trying to pick up a sandwich he dropped. The scene feels like a self-contained short film about the Flash. It would feel that way even if it didn't seem to promise a love story that the film is not interested in developing. The build-up to the wreck is masterful, with Spielberg-quality visuals and Flash's subsequent rearrangement of reality to produce the desired outcome. Miller's facial expressions are as perfect as the director's choices. By any objective measure, this is a scene that could be cut for time. But in a restructured, remade movie that seems to exist entirely to showcase Snyder's decadent and voluptuous idea of what superhero myth-making should be, that would be like looking at a peacock and concluding that the problem was too much plumage. Zack Snyder's Justice League is so fragmented that it could have been titled 32 Short Films About the Justice League. It often makes momentous promises, or sets up seemingly important relationships which it then forgets. It's so bombastic that it makes Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice seem modest. It will mainly please the people who clamored for it. Even fans of the genre might consider it a bit much. It owes as much to rock concerts, video games, and multimedia installations as it does to commercial narrative filmmaking. It's maddening. It's monumental. It's art.
I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. You like to move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it.